So again, welcome to EEI Live. Today we are going to be covering EEI 101 and give you an introduction to EEI and everything that you'll need to get started to bring EEI into your classroom. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Christy Porter-Humpert, and I'm a Senior Environmental Education Specialist here at Cal Recycle. And with me here in our office is Wendy Weller, and Wendy is a fourth grade teacher in the Elk Grove Unified School District. So Wendy, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I am Wendy Weller, and I teach fourth grade at Robert J. Fite Elementary. I've been involved with EEI since I think about 2007 in various ways.
Since the early days.
Yeah, I did some field testing and some teacher rewriting, which was really fun. But my favorite thing to do with EEI is to use it in my classroom and to just watch my kids connect with the subject matter.
And Wendy, you've taught lots of different kinds of student populations with EEI as well.
Yeah, I've taught general education and special education both, and have used EEI in both settings at various grade levels. So I hope that you come away from this webinar as excited about the possibilities of EEI, no matter what your teaching setting is, as I am.
Okay, great. Okay, so we've introduced ourselves, so we're going to invite everyone out there to tell us who you are. So I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll. So tell us if you're a teacher, at what grade level, if you're an administrator, and if you are other than associated with the school, just hit that last box there.
All right. We got a nice blend of different experiences and grade levels, it looks like.
Okay, so I'm going to close that poll and share the results. So Wendy, it looks like we've got a lot of kindergarten through fifth grade teachers with us today.
Excellent.
And a handful of middle school and high school teachers and administrators as well.
You know, really, no matter what your grade level is, the activities that you see today will be just as engaging for students at your grade level, whether you're a high school or a middle school teacher. I think you'll love it just as much as you are interested in the things you see the elementary teachers being offered today.
Absolutely.
So, and in a minute you'll get a chance to take a look at all of our units, and if you're like me, the first time I looked at the curriculum, I couldn't wait to order it.
So let's take a look at our agenda for today. I'm going to start out by giving our audience a background on EEI and how it came to be. And then we're going to take a tour through the EEI units. There are 85 of the units. We're not going to talk about each one individually, but we'll take a grade level tour. And Wendy and I will chime in a little bit about some of our favorites. And then Wendy's going to walk us through a teacher's edition, because they're all set up the same way, whether you're in kindergarten or in high school. Then we're going to focus on a few of the reasons you might want to bring EEI into your classroom and some of the reasons that Wendy likes it. And finally, we're going to let you know how you can order your own EEI unit, including materials for your students. Okay, so a little bit about the history of EEI, and actually Wendy and I have both been working with EEI since it was in development. It is an environment-based curriculum. It basically teaches academic subjects of science and history, social science through an environmental lens. And it was inspired by a vision of environmental literacy for all Californians. And this vision was shared by a group that included State Senator Fran Pavley. And she had been formerly a middle school teacher, and she felt that the best way to get the environment taught in the classroom was to get it into the curriculum, the standard curriculum. So she authored a bill back in 2003 that led to the creation of the EEI curriculum. And Wendy, I know this looks familiar to you because you were here on the day back in 2010 that the curriculum was approved by the State Board of Education.
It was never a place I expected to be. I never thought that talking to the State Board of Education would be something I'd ever do, but it was pretty exciting to see it actually be voted on after the years of development and the things I'd been involved in with it. So I can't imagine how excited your staff was that day.
Well, it had been many years of hard work,
yes.
But they were approving it as teaching certain standards for science and history, social science to mastery.
Yeah, so it is, I believe, the latest curriculum approved by the State Board of Education.
It is. So some of the features of EEI, it is grades kindergarten through 12th grade. Like we mentioned, there are 85 units, science and history, social science, and an environment-based education. So it's teaching those subjects through that environmental lens. So before we sat down to write the curriculum, we needed to figure out, in general, well, what do we want students to know about their relationship with the environment? So the first thing we did was develop these 5 environmental principles. And these are actually now required to be included in all future textbook adoptions. And we've been working closely with Department of Education to make sure that these environmental principles are included in the science framework that's being drafted right now for NGSS. And they're updating the history social science framework as well right now. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't know that.
So the standards are the same, but they're updating the framework. And again, they're weaving in the environmental principles, and it's required in the textbook adoption criteria.
You know, and I think having taught EEI for a number of years, these principles are so important, and they link really naturally to these subjects. It's not like it's this big stretch to get these environmental literacy, environmental principles included in terms of what you're studying.
Yeah, and some of these are so basic that they're included in kindergarten, like Principle 1. Some are more complicated, like Principle 5, and we see that more in some of the middle school and high school units. So you don't see all of these principles in each unit. You see 1 or 2 of them.
Yeah, and I found that they help my students to make connections between, the facts and the kind of, well, why is this happening, or why would they do this?
Yeah. So with that, let's take a tour through the EEI units by grade level, and I want to point out that in that box for GoToWebinar, you have a tab that says Handouts, and you do have a copy of the curriculum catalog in there, and the catalog includes a brief description of what you'll find in each unit, including the components. So the other thing I want to point out before we move on is that we do have prior webinars that we've done, and Wendy's helped host some of those webinars that are unit specific. So if you're interested in taking a closer look at specific units rather than just getting the overview we're doing today, you can look at some of those on-demand webinars, and we'll show you that training page later in today's webinar. Starting in kindergarten, A Day in My Life, one of my favorite units. This is the unit where the students play resources bingo, and they learn that everything they use in their daily lives somehow comes from the environment.
Yeah, it's true, and I'm so impressed that kindergartners are learning what a natural system is, and that they're part of it, and that the natural resources they use come from and are part of a natural system.
And that they can make a difference by little things like turning off a light and recycling.
And they'll have fun while they're learning it.
Yeah. So in first grade, the students are learning how animals meet their needs in different ways. So those are the science units you see down there on the bottom. And some of these have some just great connection with California, and that's one of the things that makes EEI unique, like that open wide look inside.
I love that unit.
That's the one that has a big book that looks at California Channel
Islands. Yeah. Oh, it's beautiful, and it's so many great pictures, and the information is really engaging too.
So we're going to just highlight a couple of these at each grade level, or one, so that we can get through these. by 5 o'clock. Second grade, students are actually introduced to economics
They are.
in second grade here in the dollars and cents of food production. And then just learning about animal and plant reproduction cycles. Third grade, Wendy, you've taught some of these, haven't you?
I have taught several of these. I think one of my all-time favorite units is the structures for survival in a healthy ecosystem. And I should just say right here that with the introduction of the next generation science standards, NGSS, some of these units are really changing grade levels. And I teach fourth grade, and I was so happy to realize that, oh, you know what, structures for survival is kind of becoming a fourth grade unit.
It is.
So some of these, that's another thing to keep in mind. If your district is starting to really engage the NGSS standards, you might want to look at the NGSS standards before you order your units, kind of with an eye to the subject rather than the grade level that's on the unit.
And that's a good point, Wendy. We'll be talking a little bit more about NGSS later on in the webinar and where they can find some correlation guides.
But yeah, some great stuff here in third grade.
And let's look at fourth grade, which is the grade you're teaching now, and this Witnessing the Gold Rush unit is one of our most popular units. Teaching about the gold rush and the impact that it had on the environment as well.
But another piece of this unit is some really nice excerpts of some primary source materials. So students have an opportunity to engage with primary source, which doesn't always happen when we're looking at textbooks. Great unit.
And you know, one of my favorites is that Life and Death with Decomposers, where we look at decomposition and looking at compost piles and other garden-based connections as well.
Yes.
So that's a fun one. And mission connections in Cultivating California.
Yeah, Cultivating California, you can't tell by looking at the cover of this, but this is a whole different way of looking at missions. It's a really exciting unit. You know, of course, I teach fourth grade, so I could go on and on about these.
Well, let's move on to fifth, where if you teach fifth grade, you know there's a heavy emphasis in science on water units. And with the drought going on right now, these have become very popular units as well.
But you know, that human settlements and the natural regions of the eastern seaboard, really interesting unit too. Really great American history connection that connects in a way to California, so check that one out too.
Fun. Now, sixth grade is the grade level where we have the most units. We have 12 units, 6 history, social science, and 6 science units. And in history, social science, we're looking at ancient civilizations. And then in science, we're looking at energy and natural resources. Okay, seventh grade, there's some fun units. Extinction, there's a great California connection, looking at the La Brea tar pits, and actually we're going to be doing an in-person training down at the La Brea tar pits.
Really? Yes. Oh, that sounds like fun.
Soon. So if you're down in that area, check that out on our training page. And we also look at Mayan, Aztec, and Incan civilizations in seventh grade units as well, with an eye towards natural resources.
Yeah.
So with eighth grade, students are exploring immigration from Northern Europe to the U.S. during the first half of the 19th century, and also looking at river systems and water rights and how that affected development in the American West.
Yes.
High school earth science units, looking at the greenhouse effect, carbon cycles. One of my favorite units is liquid gold, again really relevant with the drought going on, but it really explores why is there more water in the northern part of the state rather than the south, and how do we get the water down to the southern part of the state. And some of the politics that get involved with that as well.
You know, it's good because this unit really kind of gives them a whole background for the long history of issues with water in California, and I think would only help students be able to frame a lot of current events and come to their own conclusions about what they think about them vis-a-vis water in California.
And speaking of students coming to their own conclusions, I'm glad you brought that up, Wendy, because like in the high school biology units, one of the units is on genetic engineering.
Yes.
And as you know, that can be a little bit controversial.
It can.
And with both the genetic engineering and with the greenhouse effect in those earth science units, the EEI units, they present information. They promote critical thinking with the students, but they don't promote an agenda.
I love that about EEI, and I think that's one of the most powerful aspects of it. It's not pushing an agenda. It's encouraging critical thinking and engagement with issues.
It's giving both sides of an argument in many cases, and you know that a lot of times there's role playing.
Absolutely.
The unit will assign the students to represent a certain stakeholder, and then they have to engage in argument from evidence.
Exactly.
It's very NGSS.
Exactly. Also in that same high-tech unit, there's a great activity, sort of a gene splicing activity, where they build a model, which is also very NGSS.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're doing that themselves.
Yes.
So EEI World History Units, it's looking at the Industrial Revolution, and Wendy and I were just talking before the webinar how EEI looks at some of these subjects in a little different lens, like with the colonization. Many of those nations were looking for raw materials to use in their industry. So it's just a little different perspective.
You know, and I love the way it ties it back, and not in a heavy-handed way, to the fact that those raw materials are natural resources from a natural system. And it gets kids thinking, you know, on a bigger horizon, I would say, to view these issues. Oh, wait a second. That was part of a natural system. That would have an effect.
Yeah.
Was that effect positive or negative? And, you know, and they decide once again.
So here are the high school U.S. history units. Looking at different relevant issues, like that bottom left-hand unit, United States and Mexico working together, it gets into some of the issues with pollution flowing into the U.S. through the Tijuana River, and how do we deal with those types of issues.
Exactly.
And then this is our final slide on our tour through the units, but I really like that bottom middle unit, sustaining economies and Earth's resources. Rather than using widgets to look at economics, EEI is using natural resources like fisheries and supply demand. And I mean, we all hear in the news about what happens with fisheries when they're overfished.
Yeah, exactly.
So, just a different way of looking at some of these subjects.
Well, and one of the really powerful things about every single one of these units is it does have that explicit California connection. So it really localizes it in a really unique way. It's not just like, oh, fisheries. You know, it really unfolds what is implied in that. So it's not just like some vague idea and some, you know, abstract vocabulary word. And it connects kids to the state they live in. It's wonderful.
Well, okay. At this point, Wendy, we've taken a tour through all of the units. Now, with each unit, someone orders. There are certain components that come with it, and some are specific to elementary units only. But I'm going to let you talk about what we're seeing up here on the screen.
Absolutely. So, you know, of course, you would expect a teacher's edition. No surprises there, but I will say easy to follow. All of the material that you need is right there in the unit, in the teacher's edition. It keeps your life simple. You don't have to look for the book that has the answers in it because they're all in the teacher's edition immediately following the lesson procedures. Then we have all of the student pieces, things like the big book, student workbooks, dictionaries, and readers. Those all come to you, and of course all EEI curriculum is free. You can order as many student units as you need for the number of students that you have. And the really good news about that is that it means that your students can individualize their readers. They can highlight, they can take notes, they can mark them up, so that it really helps us to meet our Common Core standards. You can see in the background there that California Natural Regions reader, that's included in several 3rd and 4th grade units. That's a wonderful piece, and we've been noticing in our students, because we've been using it as our English language arts, because we don't have a Common Core aligned curriculum, we've been noticing the deepening knowledge in our students as we go through that and have them learn how to highlight and how to take notes and how to write summaries based on the contents of that book. So really versatile stuff, especially when many of us are having to kind of scramble for Common Core alignment. Information cards if they're needed, word wall cards, nice vocabulary piece between the dictionaries, which by the way my students love those dictionaries. Those are an elementary piece. Yeah, so you won't find them in middle school, high school. But you can see on the word wall cards there's an image associated with every vocabulary word, and what you see is I think 4th through 6th grade cards have the word on the front, the definition on the back. Primary cards have the word and the definition on the front as well as the image. And of course visual aids, teachers' masters that contain your choice of unit assessments, either the alternative unit assessment or the traditional unit assessment you choose.
And we'll get to that. Closer.
Yeah. And then the NGSS wall maps that I could just rave on and on about. They're really wonderful. They're a fabulous source of information and really help to meet that Common Core standard for students to get information from multiple media and multiple sources.
And Wendy, you know that we worked with National Geographic to develop these maps just for the EEI curriculum, and I think we have about 13 different maps.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to mention is that on our website you can peruse any of these files. To look inside of the teacher's edition, you need to sign up to get a password, but the rest of them you can look at without a password as well. And the student workbooks are form fillable on the website. So if someone did want to go green and not have printed copies of the curriculum, especially in the older grades, they might be able to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's a page from that Natural Regions reader that you were talking about.
Yes, indeed. There are a lot of pluses for English language development, not to mention, not the least of which is all of the beautiful visuals between the illustrations and the photographs and the maps. So many rich sources. I find that it really helps my English language learners to understand, especially the vocabulary piece. I have to say, those really help with the vocabulary piece. I think in elementary school, especially, all students are English language learners at some level. So great resource for that.
Well, let's take a look inside the teacher's edition, and like I mentioned earlier, they're all set up the same format, and actually National Geographic worked with us to develop this format for the curriculum.
Okay. Yeah, it's very effective to use. There's an overview of the entire unit, and there's also an overview for each lesson. Then you can see in this unit overview at the bottom the at a glance, which is really nice because you can look at each lesson and just kind of get a sense of the trajectory of the whole unit, you know, where it starts and the development of the unit to get to the final lesson and kind of the culminating activities. So the background for teachers is really, it's comprehensive without being overbearing or unduly difficult to read. You know, it's very accessible information. So, you know, I don't particularly have a science background, but so I find that when I read that background information, I really feel ready to teach the unit, and I feel very equipped to be able to engage with the questions. And that's right there for you. It doesn't take long to read it either. Those are, what, 2 pages long,
Yeah,
maybe?
they're pretty short.
Yeah, they're pretty
Good
short, and
information.
they're very easy to read. And here's another thing I love that I had mentioned is the California Connections. I can't tell you how exciting it is to students to come across things in textbooks that they have some prior knowledge or experience with.
Or that they're hearing about in the news.
Exactly. You know, the things that are part of their daily life. And this is one of the real powerful and rich aspects of EEI. And I know whatever unit you choose and whatever unit you teach, you will also appreciate the impact it has on your students. And then, of course, there are extensions and unit resources, and there are a lot of them. There are many things that you can go to, and I find that with EEI, there's some real natural extensions. The kids naturally ask questions, well, what about this? And they want to go farther. So really, it's great to have this resource, but EEI really lends itself to thinking deeper.
Well, in speaking of naturally lending itself to other places to go, I want to give us a plug for one of our upcoming webinars, which is going to be on project-based learning.
Oh,
and
cool.
Teacher Ambassador Jim Bentley is going to be doing this for us. He's from Wendy School District as well, down in Elk Grove.
He
But
is.
he is a dynamic teacher and speaker and has done incredible things with EEI being the starting point. So I encourage you to check out our training page and sign up for that webinar, which I believe is on November 12th for the first one, and then we'll be repeating it again in December.
Excellent. It's amazing. The things he does in his classroom are truly amazing.
And speaking of extensions as well, I also want to mention the CREEK website, creek.org, and
Yes.
This is a place where teachers can connect with different non-formal providers like nature centers, Project WET, different providers that are natural extensions to some of the EEI units.
You know, and our CREEK coordinators are great resources. They can point you toward grants for things like field trips or, you know, maybe some projects that you'd like to do to find some funding for. So, yeah, check that one out for sure.
Okay, so assessments.
Oh, don't we love testing? But you know what? Here's
Some of
the
these
thing.
are fun.
Some of these are fun, yes. You know, the traditional assessments are fine, you know, and some units you get to the end of a unit, you just go, I just want to get this assessment done. Grades are locking, report cards are coming up, and I just got to get it done. So maybe you do that. But they're good, easy to grade, easy for kids to take. But then we have the alternative unit assessments that tend to be project-based. Kids get to engage their creativity a little bit more with them and actually have some fun in creating them. So you get to decide what you want to do. This is the one piece that does not come printed for you because you have to decide which one you want to use.
And you can find that on our website then.
Yes.
To download in the Teacher's Masters section in print.
Yes.
So, okay, well, thank you, Wendy, for walking us through the
Sure.
Teacher's Edition. So I'm going to summarize what we hear from different teachers on why they like using EEI in their classroom, and then I'm going to let Wendy elaborate on each of these reasons from her perspective. So EEI is easy to use. It motivates and engages, like we've seen from some of the things we've seen already. It supports Common Core and Next Generation Science standards, and we'll tell you more about that. We've mentioned it's free material for you and your students, and there's free training. So, Wendy, tell our audience about your experience on using EEI.
So my experience with using EEI, I just find every time I use it, there's something so exciting that happens with the students. And it's kind of funny because you never know where that point is going to come for which group of kids, because they will have different things they get very excited about. But the step-by-step procedures are right there in the Teacher's Edition, like I mentioned before. They're easy to follow. You don't have to gather a bunch of esoteric materials that you have to hunt high and low for. It's generally things you can either find in your closets at school already or in your cupboards at home. It's flexible and collaborative. So many activities in this really foster and encourage that kind of group work that's so valued in Common Core. And like the other day, my class was playing a food chain game. Oh my gosh, they had so much fun with it. But it was so much fun for me to walk around the room and just to see how engaged they were in groups of like 5, sometimes 6 kids in this game.
Well, and I think that leads right into the next slide.
Oh, yes. When I taught emotionally disturbed 3rd and 4th graders for a while, and I have to say this reader, Roots and Trunks, Beaks and Claws, from the Structures for Survival unit, was a revelation to me. I taught this unit after lunch. I admittedly had low expectations for what was going to go on in that classroom after lunch. But to my surprise, these kids we sat on the floor together and they were so engaged in this reader. I mean, it was amazing and it was a beautiful thing. When they looked at the illustration, like you can see the one, it shows one of the animals in the forest that's described in this reader, the pileated woodpecker. And first they talk about the tongue, and you can see, oh my gosh, that thing has a really long tongue. And I found out it like rolls up in their head, amazingly. But then on beyond that, you see that detail that shows what is actually on the tip of the tongue. So when you talk about the structure of the tongue, they actually could see that tongue goes in those little holes that the woodpecker makes, and that the tip of that tongue is like a series of little hooks to catch the beetles that the woodpecker eats. And these kids just grabbed onto that, especially one of my kids who had like an early kindergarten reading level. He was the one who made the connections first before the other kids. It was amazing, and it taught me a lot about him as a learner. And it was that beautiful visual piece that brought him into the conversation.
And I know we're focusing a lot on elementary units, and Wendy's an elementary teacher, but there's some great California Connection stories in the middle school and high school as well. I mentioned earlier about the La Brea tar pits that's highlighted in that extinction unit. There's a high school biology unit that talks about the Channel Islands, the Galapagos of California, and that's in the isolation of species unit.
Okay.
So there are so many that we hear the teacher feedback that the students really were engaged. And for me, I like to say that EEI helps students answer the why should I care question.
There's a 7th grade unit that has the California Connection is about pupfish. Really fascinating California Connection, and then kind of a follow-up activity where the kids actually get to do a simulation so they experience, how the isolation of these species could lead to extinction, as well as to look at the amazing adaptations that these pupfish made, and then to come to realize these fish are like an inch long. Yeah,
really
just
tiny.
really, really, really good stuff.
So let's move on to Common Core and then NGSS so we can get through all our material.
Let's do it. What's really great is that every unit comes with a Common Core correlation guide to help you with the standards.
And they'll receive that when they order their print copy.
And we'll actually take a look at a little bit from that in the next slide. But really, it's almost like, as someone I've worked with is fond of saying, it's almost like they had a crystal ball when they were developing these units, because it was before the days of Common Core, quite frankly. But it really fosters things like critical thinking and analysis in some very real ways. It also it really does build collaborative skills, because there are so many collaborative activities. Not to mention the information in diverse formats that we see in things like the National Geographic maps, and a lot of the visual aids and information cards that'll have things like graphs and pie charts and multiple ways to analyze information. And then here's a little piece from one of the Common Core correlation guides, and this is just the front cover. It kind of gives you a taste of how many of the Common Core standards this curriculum engages with. Now, once you go inside the Common Core correlation guides, they're typically 20 plus pages long because they will tell you which Common Core standards are being engaged at every step of every lesson. So you can get very explicit information, and they're also written with some really useful teaching tips as well. And like Christy, you just said, every time you order a unit, you'll get one of these. It will just come with your
and
your
they're
curriculum.
also posted on our website if folks
Yes.
want to check those out there as well.
Yes. Then we come to some more Common Core basics, and I know for teachers who don't feel like they were really trained to teach reading and writing, but Common Core kind of calls on you to do that. This is a great resource. So for middle school and high school teachers, I think what you'll find is that the activities that are in EEI do this for you. It's built into the curriculum, so you don't have to scramble to figure out how you're going to do it. It is built in, and the Common Core guides really help you see where that's going to happen too.
EEI also is good for supporting teachers who are transitioning to NGSS, and we know that EEI was written for the former 1998 science standards, but like I said, it is a very good tool for transitioning.
Yes.
And let's look a little bit more specifically about how it does that. One of the shifts, as you know, Wendy, for NGSS is really trying to take a more look at how science connects with the real world. And as we've already seen, that's what EEI is all about.
It is.
And EEI, it incorporates some of those science and engineering practices, and I've been working on some of these NGSS correlation guides that are posted on our website now. So we've got about 10 more to go, but many of them are posted, so you can see some of those connections. We especially see a lot of the practices of engaging in argument from evidence, analyzing, interpreting data. The content is there, and like you said, there are some shifts with grade level from like with the structures for survival.
Yes.
That's a little bit more fourth grade now. So that basic reproduction is now going to be third grade. So there are some shifts, but our guides will show you that as well. And then with cross-cutting concepts, cause and effect, that is just such a central theme in EEI of
It's
when
all
we
over
do
it.
something, systems and systems models,
Yes.
stability and change. So it is a great tool for that transition. Like we said earlier, there are free EEI materials, hard copies for teachers and students, and I'll talk in a few minutes about how you can order those. We have free training, like you're participating in now. I had mentioned that project-based learning webinar that's going to be coming up next month. And you can also find those recorded webinars, and Wendy's helped host some of those. We've had teachers, we call them teacher ambassadors, people like Wendy who help us with trainings. So we have a number of different teacher ambassadors who have hosted these webinars. So many folks are asking, well, I really want to see more of us, digging into a unit. Well, look at those recorded webinars, and that's where you can get more of that information. We do provide in-person trainings as well, and Wendy helps us with those here in the Sacramento area. But we provide trainings throughout the state. If you can get a group of teachers together, at least 15, we are willing to come out and do an in-person training for you to qualify those teachers to receive the free materials. So here's a look at our EEI, CaliforniaEEI.org webpage, and you'll see circled there in red our training tab. So you can see what in-person trainings are coming up, more of the live webinars, and then you can see the on-demand webinars as well. Wendy, every once in a while I'll see you post or like something on our Facebook page, so I know you're on there.
Yeah.
So we encourage folks to like us on Facebook and to follow us on Twitter. You can share some of your experiences with EEI. We love to see that.
You can, and sometimes those EEI posts will connect you to an interesting extension resource too. So yeah, so like them on EEI and Facebook, and you'll get all kinds of good stuff. But not too much. It's not like I never look at the EEI thing and go, oh great. I always look at it and go, oh, that's interesting. You know, so hopefully you'll like EEI and you'll have the same reaction.
Good. Okay, so what folks have been waiting for, finally. How do I get
How do I get this?
Okay, so we will be sending you a follow-up email. You may even get it tonight, but no more than 24 hours. And it will tell you how to order your free units. You can order up to 2 free units if you're a first-time participant. And I do want to let folks know that because EEI has been so popular this school year, we're in mid-late October right now.
Mm-hmm.
We have many units, Wendy, that are on back order.
That's incredible.
So our website will let you know if a unit is on back order. And some of these back orders we can fill sooner, but some of them it may be spring before teachers get those orders. But we were talking about this before the show, and Wendy was saying, you know, look at some of those other units that aren't on back order, and she's discovered some nice surprises.
Exactly. You know, I have yet to be dissatisfied with an EEI unit. So, you know, if you don't want to wait, find one that fits you in some way, even if it's not your first choice. And I think you'll be very pleased with what you teach and what your students learn and how they engage.
Yeah, and again, I just want to remind folks that in their handouts tab on the right-hand side of their screen, there is a copy of the EEI Curriculum catalog. So if you want to peruse that, and you know, you can choose. Again, you can get up to 2 now if this is your first training, and then with each unit that you take our post-survey on, then you qualify to order another unit with student materials. And if you still have questions about the ordering, you can check out our website, and at the bottom of the screen you can see our How to Order page. Our ordering policy is also included in that handout section in the right-hand box. So we have a few teachers, I believe, that are returning that have already been trained but wanted to tune in today to learn more about the basics. And you qualify to order units as well. But to qualify, what you need to do is to take the post-survey for the units that you already have, if you have units. And as soon as we see you've given us your feedback, that's really your payment to get more units. And Wendy, tell us a little bit about your experience with the survey.
It does not take long to fill out. It's not that many questions, like literally 5 to 10 minutes, and you're done. I recently realized, I owed them a couple of surveys because I wanted a unit. They said, you need to do a survey.
Yeah, that's your payment. We'll send it to you.
It is.
You just have to complete
So
that
I sat down
survey.
and really, 5 minutes, I was done.
And here we've got a screenshot. Again, this is on our californiaeei.org website. There's a red tab in the upper right-hand corner. When you receive the unit, it tells you where to go to take the survey. But if you lose that little piece of paper, you can always go to our website and find the survey as well. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions coming in, so I think we will call it a day, Wendy.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Wendy.
Happy teaching.
Okay, bye now.